as we get into today's stuff, we're going to explore how we can develop this muscle of choosing how to respond. Everyone responds to things, right? Everyone, we are constantly responding to the things that are happening in our environment or to the things that we're thinking about. We're constantly responding. He said reactive people respond on the basis of what? Did you catch this? Emotions. And what did you say? Yeah, they like, oh, it's rainy. This is the one that kills me, and we all do this, but oh, it's Monday. I guess I should be bummed today. Or it's Friday, and I guess it's a good day today. Really, this is a statistic that just, when I heard it, I just couldn't believe it. But if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Going back to our discussion on stress, I don't know if we mentioned this. More people die. Did we talk about when more people die on what day of the week would you guess, based on what we talked about with the effects of stress? Monday. More people die at 9 o'clock on Monday morning than any other time of the week. What's happening at 9 o'clock on Monday morning? Most people are going to work, and most people hate their jobs. And because of that, they have a perception that is, or they are making a response based on their emotions about it. Another thing that's interesting, what day of the year are there more deaths than any other day of the year? Close.
Last day in December.
Thanksgiving. New Year's?
It's the day after Christmas. Now, when you say, yeah, why are you nodding your head yes?
Well, because I can imagine, like, if you're having a Christmas without people and stuff like that, it would be really depressing. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like if I didn't have my family. I feel like the next day, like, everybody would be seeing all of everything, like, the people together and, like, dinners, and then all of a sudden, the next day you're just like, I don't know, I think I'd
Right. There's one interpretation that they're making. What's another interpretation that people make on the day after Christmas?
Not alone. Sometimes people have family that they just absolutely hate it because it's the whole
Good.
house business.
Good. So you've been through all that, and now you realize why you hate your family so much. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Corey?
You're thinking about, like, it's like the build up to Christmas, the high.
Okay. Could be that. And you realize that you've got a credit card bill that is, you got to take care of now. I mean, all of these things are interpretations. In other words, we're responding on the basis of emotions and circumstances. He said the proactive person responds on the basis of what? Values. Decisions that they have made about things. And that's what I want to explore today. One final comment that Covey said, and I think it's possibly one of the most enlightened aphorisms, one of the most enlightened statements I've ever heard. He said, if you think the problem is outside of you, that thought is the problem. Tune into that. If you think the problem is outside of you, that thought is the problem. Now, why does that make sense now to us?
Because you immediately just like release control. You don't have any control anymore once you decide that. You're just prone to the circumstance.
Right.
So that's a problem.
Right.
You can't react to it.
You have relegated your power to the circumstance as opposed to your decision about the circumstance. And let that circumstance control how you decide to think and ultimately feel. Corey?
I've heard this. If you think that your problem is because of everybody outside of you, then everyone else will have to go get better. It's their problems for you to get better.
For you to feel better. And that's a no-win situation no matter what. Right?
Yeah.
There's no way you can win if you need everyone else to change in order for you to feel better. There's no possible way you'll win. And that's not how life's set up. but we're not enlightened to get to, we haven't figured that out until now. We're figuring that out and going, wow, I don't have to be upset about my neighbor and how she's not doing what I think she should be doing. I can let her be that way. Oh, I didn't know I could.
Isn't that just an example of locus of control?
Entirely. Yes. Entirely locus of people who are internally driven, who have an internal locus of control, decide for themselves how they want to feel, irregardless of the circumstances. So, like he said at the beginning, proactive people carry their own weather. Doesn't make any difference that it's raining or sunny. You know, you're not going to be. And I know this is tough for us because we've been conditioned to every year we get depressed in January. Right? I'm not getting enough sun. Or it's January, or I just know that something's making me depressed. We've been conditioned that when somebody swears at you, this happened to me. I was driving my car. I have this old Jeep. I had this whole Jeep that's like one of those boxes. It's a what? I didn't hear what you said. No, it's just a Cherokee Sport. It was a really old Jeep, and I was driving along Washington Boulevard up there by it's 5 Points. I don't know if it's yeah. And I was just driving along, and I was on my way to school. It was a nice day, and I had my windows open, and I was just driving along, and you can't go very fast there because everyone's in the same speed. And this guy, really, he drove up next to me, and I looked over, and he rolled down his window, and he looked at me, and forgive me, I'm not one who swears, but this is what he said, and I'm just quoting him. He looked up at me, and he went, "Asshole!" And I'm driving, and I went, "How do you know?" You know? He doesn't know me well enough. I might be, but he can't judge whether I am or not. Now, we're conditioned when somebody, and I thought about this afterwards, if 20 years ago somebody had said that to me, I'd have gone, "Well, I'll show you. My Cherokee's twice as big as yours." Bam! Or I'd get right up on his, you know how people drive when they're really ticked off at somebody, they go like this far, 6 inches away from their bumper. "I'll show you how mad I am," you know? But I thought, I don't need to get upset about what this guy's having a bad day. And whatever I did, I don't know. Can't imagine what I could have done different than anyone else in that little section that made him want to unload on me. But I was thinking, you know, my thought was, I decided to respond from my own values and my own decisions, and my own values say, people can't help it. It's their own fault that they have these problems. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's the decision I've made about it. When somebody's upset about something, it has nothing to do with me. I've decided that. Which is maybe just as inaccurate as he's upset at me, and, you know, that I should get upset that he's upset at me. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't need to be... I can't let that guy, like Corey's saying, I can't let that guy make me feel how I should feel. So ultimately, we've said, like Eleanor Roosevelt, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent, or make you feel like a fool without your consent. Well, my thinking is, no one can make you anything without your consent. So when you say to somebody, "Man, you're making me so bored or so angry or so whatever, jealous," well, that's a lie. And we can't, if we want to be in control of our thoughts and feelings and attitudes, then we have to accept responsibility for every one of those emotions that we have, and we cannot say, he's doing it to me. That's the essence of what I think Covey's trying to tell us. So it's no longer, I can't possibly make you bored. Isn't that great? So if a teacher's making you bored, let's change that now to say, the teacher is saying what she's saying, or he's saying, and how do you finish that if that's how you're feeling? Okay, so that's something that I am choosing to be uninterested about. I am thinking boring thoughts. He can't make you bored, or angry, or upset, or anxious, or anything, without you deciding to have that be the case for you. And his focus, remember his comment that he made from Viktor Frankl's book? The last ultimate freedom. Did anyone catch that? The power to choose what? No. The power to choose one's own response or reaction to any given set of circumstances. The power to choose one's own response to any given set of circumstances. That was Viktor Frankl, who worst circumstances a human being's ever been in and lived through. That's a great book if you want to read a good book. Okay. All right. Well, if we have that power, if we have that ability, what did we say is in here? What did he separate? He separated stimulus response, and he said between that is our power to choose, our ability to choose our response, our greatest human freedom. Well, if that's the case, then some of us, this is a new muscle. And so we're going to do some barbell lifting with this muscle. This is something I created a few years ago. And so far, and if you have any other things to add to this, this is kind of evolving, but it's still, as far as in the years that I've been teaching it, it still works, it still fits, it still seems to be an accurate way of when Covey says our ability to choose our own response, then the next question is, well, how can I respond to things? And pretty much, I've been watching. I'm hugely interested in human behavior. I love watching people and how they are in situations, and so I've been kind of keeping an eye on this, just to watch how people respond to situations, whether consciously or unconsciously. And it seems that, to me, so far I can find 7 or 8 ways that we can kind of categorize different ways that people respond. So I want to walk you through this, and we'll use examples so that this will be perfectly clear how it is that we can respond more proactively. So you'll notice there are several columns. The first column says degree of inner peace. And you'll notice towards the top there's more peace. And that's the main thing that I'm interested in, is how peaceful am I in this situation, and can I get myself... Remember, what did we say precedes every emotion? A thought. We always have a thought before every emotion. If that's the case, and we want to feel good, and in my case, I love feeling peaceful. Even when I'm playing full court basketball, I still want to feel peaceful in it. I find I play basketball better when I am peaceful. And so we have to ask ourselves, how do I get myself to that emotion or joy or happiness or whatever emotions are our favorites? It still works here. The next column says usefulness. In other words, how effective is it towards either relaxation or stress? The next column is, you have to turn to the side, is where we see things, when we have situations in our environment and we see them as they are, or below the line, how we think they should be. Big difference. How they are or how we think they should be. The next one, this is the part that is how our thinking is happening. So, and we'll go through each one of those. That next line sounds like, in other words, what are we saying to ourselves for each of those ways that we respond? People typically say certain things when something's happening. And we'll make that really clear. And then the resulting feeling, that's what we're after, or what we want to avoid, those things that are below that more bold line or above it. Those kind of are the feel good or don't feel so good kinds of results based on that thinking. If every emotion is preceded by a thought, we get in touch with our thoughts, we have solved the problem of bad emotions. Absolutely. Okay? And I'm not saying as we do this, we should never feel sad or angry or anything like that. What I am saying is, all of these emotions are driven by us. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have the whole list of emotions. But you're doing it to yourself, and if you want to change it, you can do that too. That's the good news of all this. So, let's use some examples. Has anyone had anything recently where they found themselves, and we'll go back to the way everyone else says it, you got angry or you got upset or you got really stressed about as a result of that instance that took place?
Assistant store director at work, and it seems like he always has a complaint against me. Like if something goes wrong, he's like, "Oh, why didn't this get done?" And I tell him like, "Well, I wasn't working that job today, or I didn't do that yesterday because I wasn't here." But he seems like he always talks to me about it, though I wasn't the one responsible for the activity that should have been done.
So you ultimately feel...
I feel like I'm singled out, and like it really stresses me out because I walk into work and I know he's there. I'm like, okay, what is he going to complain about today? What did I do that I didn't really was supposed to do? Or what am I going to get blamed for?
Okay, good example. Who else? Does anyone else have any... Bob?
I really recently just got engaged, and
Man, that doesn't sound so bad.
And my parents weren't 100% supportive, and that was really stressful.
So how, like 12% supportive or 90% or...
They're like 10, like probably 25% like not for it. If that makes sense. They were happy for me, but they were like, maybe you should wait or something else.
Okay. Does anyone else have any instance that might...
So I walked into class today, and we started passing around this paper, and you said to write your book name on it. And for about 3 to 4 seconds, I was stressing because I didn't have the book.
Okay, that'll work. That'll work well. Let me think if I have... Okay, this happened to me, and it's a little more serious than some of those, at least in my interpretation. One day I was playing basketball, and it was just at a church, and I was just playing with a bunch of guys, and I shot the ball, and as I noticed I was going to miss, and so I pushed off to get the rebound, and it felt like somebody took a bat and just went bam in the back of my calf, and my Achilles had ruptured. And I couldn't lift my foot up. It was stuck there. I couldn't go like this. I couldn't bring my toe up. That was bad. So I'm going to use that one just to demonstrate this is kind of a I'll use another that's kind of in that level of maybe seriousness, and even more so is oh man, I forgot what's the name of it when you have a child and then it's stillborn. It's not stillborn, but it died. Miscarriage. Yeah, you have a miscarriage. Has anyone else got anything?
My husband was jumping on a trampoline and tore a big deal. He's a mechanic, so he's
Torn ACL. Maybe we'll use that instead of that one. The last one I want to use, I have a daughter who she has no idea what it means to clean something. She has the idea of we made a room. We have a basement where we deliberately made a room for her and a bathroom for her, and there's a little family room there. And really, I walk down into her room and I can't see the floor. I can't see the dresser. You barely can tell there's a bed in there. And then there's a line of stuff, and then her bathroom is similarly a mess. Okay? And here she is and I'm not like a clean freak by any stretch. I kind of like a clean place. Okay? So that's the situation that is before me in this instance. So daughter's messiness. Okay, now, what I would like to do with this, as we look at this chart that's before you, what I would like us to each tune into, because really this is, I could have put the guy swears at me. And it's still the same thing. See, this applies to every instance in which we are conscious. It can apply. And it actually, I say, it is always being applied. We just do it either consciously or not consciously. We either use our muscle to go toward these feelings that we'd prefer, or we forget, and then we wonder why we're so ticked off or stressed or whatever. Okay? And it's really that universally applicable. Okay? We just are using some situations that came to mind. So, what I want us to do is to ask ourselves, kind of focusing on this sounds like what we would say to ourselves column, and ask ourselves, okay, this lowest part, and these three that are below the line aren't necessarily in any order of quality or value. They just happen to be below the line, and I can't stick them all on the same line. But they all have the same ultimate outcome of turning on the stress response, turning on the protective response, and resulting in feelings that we would call unpleasant. Okay? So when we are in this, let's start with attachment or rightness. When we're in this mode, when something happens and we have the opportunity to respond, what does this sound like in our head? If here's what is suddenly happening for us. So for example, if, who was it had the torn ACL? Husband? Was it your husband?
Yes.
So if he's in that instance and he's in about being right or attached to what's going on, he would say something like, God, this shouldn't have happened this way. Okay? when I have this torn Achilles, man, I was in good shape. I stretched out before the game. That shouldn't have happened. Complainer, coworker. You know, he needs to be more friendly to me. Okay? Guy swears at me. No, he doesn't have any right to say that to me. He doesn't know about me. Okay? Disapproving parents. They should be more approving of what I'm wanting to do. Okay? Can you hear this is what we're saying to ourselves in the instant of the event. What's he doing giving us assignment like that? That shouldn't happen. Right? That's what he's saying to himself. How could I possibly have had a miscarriage? Now, what is the problem? You should be more clean in my house. You're in my house. You should be clean. You should take care of things. Now, what's the problem with that thought? What's the immediate problem that you can see with that thought that you're having? Okay, the resulting feeling is one of not so happy, but what's an even previous to that? Because that is true. Okay, so you're releasing responsibility for the emotion you're feeling. The fact that he's a complainer, the fact that this guy swears at me. What's the problem with responding that he shouldn't have done that?
Well, my first thought is just that you can't control it. Like, you can't control what's happening to you. You can't control how you respond, right? So, like, that's the thing, that's the problem, like, with your thinking, at least for me, is that you're trying to control what you can't.
Exactly. You're trying to control something that you cannot control. The fact that he swore at me, and the idea that I think he shouldn't have sworn at me, he already did. And I can't undo what he's done. I can't undo the fact that there's a mess. I can't, and I liked what you said. I remember I went to this conference and this lady said this, and it took me a second to realize what she said. We have to stop shoulding all over ourselves. You're exactly right with that. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we keep saying over and over, things should be this way. You should act that way. My Achilles should not have torn. The problem with that thought is, it did. Does that make sense? And all the while that we are resisting that from happening does not change the fact that it happened. You getting that? We go there. We're trained to go there. Oh my gosh, that shouldn't have happened. And we should, oh, how awful. And we find that the emotions we get are ultimately down here in that little box. We get angry. We get disappointed. And I'm not saying, okay, I'm never going to get angry or disappointed. But realize you're doing it. And if you're doing it, you can also change. Okay? So that's the first one. Does that make sense? So whatever we're thinking, we are saying this shouldn't be this way. We're attached to how we think it ought to be. It ought to be different. It isn't. You're exactly right. We don't have control over virtually almost everything that goes on around us. Okay, so the next level up, this is what the guy did who showed up next to me in the car. Instead of him, he decided to throw out a judgment at me. Well, I'll show you what you really are. Man. So let's see how this sounds. Torn ACL. When we're making a judgment about it, What might that sound like in our heads when we're talking in our heads about the torn ACL or the torn Achilles, and we're making a judgment about it? What does that sound like? Hang in here with me. What?
What do you mean? Like after my husband torn his ACL, I said, oh, I really should not have been showing off on the trampoline. Now I'm excited.
Good. I'm such a jerk. What was I thinking? Okay. The guy, the complainer, coworker. So what do you find yourself saying about this guy to others when you, oh, let me tell you, and fill in the blank of what you call him, right? That's where we turn to. Guy swears at me. Well, let me tell you what kind of person you are. You disapproving parents. Man, they're mindless. They haven't got a clue what I'm about here. Send an assignment. What a stupid professor for doing that. He shouldn't do that. You know, we waver between those bottom two. I guess I'm not worthy of having this child. We make up stuff. My daughter, you know, what am I saying to myself when I go into her room? What thought am I having that is judgmental or that is, you know, blaming or criticizing that results in, or that when I see the room? Okay, but that's the judgment call. That's the, what am I saying?
You could be saying, like, if the hamster ever got out, we'd never get him back.
She bought hamsters recently, too.
Maybe you ought to let him out.
You don't know, you don't know her either, so it's the one that you're not best friends with either. Yeah, what a slob. What a slob. How are these hamsters? I mean, you know, you make judgments about people all the time. What's the immediate problem with making a judgment about somebody? What's the immediate?
They're never accurate.
You can't possibly be accurate. I mean, think about this, and I'm not trying to be all moral or anything, but from a very practical standpoint, how many life experiences have each of you had? From the moment you're born, and even before that, a lot of what you do is a result of what happened while you were in the womb and then afterwards, and all of those life experiences. And to say that I can tell what kind of a person you are based on my limited understanding of where you've come from, there's no way we can be accurate. There's no possible way we can be accurate. Slob, how do you know? How do you know? There's no way you can tell.
I was just going to say, like, when we were looking at the, like, ways that you responsive mentioned in this one was comparing. I think comparing can be one of the absolute worst things because you think about it and you're like, well, they didn't tear their ACL. They must have been in better shape than I am. And so then it makes you go into this, oh, that shouldn't have happened because I should have done this. And I don't know, like,
Exactly.
to me sounds like it can be, like, applicable to all of those situations, but some of the worst because you don't know the other people's situations. You don't know what they've experienced to get to where they're at. And so if you compare yourself to that, then you're just, like, digging yourself into, like, an even deeper hole.
Exactly. Perfect.
So how do you deal with that when it comes to family and jobs? Because they're always being compared. Like, they always have a set standard, but jobs will always say, you need to be more like this person and set them up as an example.
Well, I think that's a difference when you're setting up a standard for something to which you need to, like as an instructor, we have certain standards. As a professor, we have you know, that's a different thing than you slob, you jerk, you idiot, you.
Like comparing, you know, why aren't you more like your sister? Or why aren't you more like your brother? Look how obedient he is.
Yeah.
He keeps his routine, why can't you? And that's not like that creates resentment too.
Yeah, and so the anecdote of that is above the line. We'll explore those in just a second. The other thing that I have noticed about comparing, which I think is fascinating, if you observe people who have a tendency to put people down, she's such an idiot. Their attempt is to try to boost themselves up. to be superior somehow than the other person by putting that other person down. Right? I'm so superior because I can make her, I can put her in a category that is far below me. Now, what's the lie about that? See, I'm convinced ain't nobody any better than anybody else, and nor does anyone have the power to be better than anybody else. It's not humanly possible to be a better human being. Now, we might do different things, and we might have vastly different outcomes, but as far as being human, we are all on exactly the same level. And so it's a lie to put somebody down. And I actually think it's interesting that the people who have the highest self-esteem, the people who feel the most comfortable with themselves, they actually try to lift other people up. They say that you don't see them trying to artificially put somebody else down. I see that over and over again. The people who are most self-confident, they're good. They don't try to push somebody. They're like, wow, you should see what a great job this guy is doing. Does that make sense? The whole idea of judging and comparing is a lie. We do it non-stop. But I think it's an ineffective way, and the resulting feelings, an ineffective way of responding to things, and the resulting feelings are not ones that we like to have, that lead toward, peacefulness and happiness and those kinds of things. The other one that's below the line is I termed it resistance. And this is where we say to ourselves, and it sounds kind of like should, but it's a little bit different when we say, I wish this weren't happening this way. I wish I wouldn't have had that torn ACL. I wish I wouldn't have torn my Achilles. I wish this guy would be nicer. I wish that guy wouldn't have, I wish he wouldn't have done that to me. Now, what's the problem with that thought? What's the immediate problem with that thought? He did. Yeah. And all the wishing I would like to have happen is not going to undo the fact that he did what he did. And here I am. Sudden assignment. Man, I wish he wouldn't have given that to us. Well, he did. And all the wanting it to be different is not going to change the fact that this is how things are. I find it fascinating how you hear of these terrible, and I'm not speaking lightly of them, but you hear terrible environmental, like tsunamis and hurricanes and tornadoes and all of these earthquakes and all these things that happen. And certainly those are painful during them. And there's going to be tough times repairing everything. But to stay in that, man, I wish this flood would never have happened. Oh, I wish only it could have been different. If only I would have done something. And we just stay in those martyr, this poor me, instead of doing something useful about it. I wish my daughter would take care of things. She's got 2 arms, she's got a brain, she can do something about it. And then you've heard of people. I have this neighbor who I'm sure every night she just thinks to herself, oh man, I wish that neighbor was nicer to me, and I wish that, and she actually told me this, she gets virtually no sleep at all because she sits down here in these 3 levels thinking about, man, I wish those guys were different, and those guys are really idiots, and these guys, all night long. So you can see, and I think boredom, I put in there boredom. How do you tell? There's a way to tell if you're resisting what is happening. If you're resisting the way things are, in other words, when you're saying resisting, meaning I wish things were different, there's 2 or 3 ways to tell if you are resisting. One is if time slows down for you. When time is going much slower for you, in other words, I had this instance, this situation where my family and I went to Hawaii a few years ago, and on the way back, and I'm not trying to be mean, this is just what happened, but I was in the middle, we had to split up our seats because we got cheap flights at the last second, they just put us wherever. And so I sat between 2 really immense ladies. They loved talking to each other about stuff I didn't care about. I wanted to read, I wanted to sleep, and all I heard, and both of them, they were really large, and their arms were on the rests. You know, those rests you have to share them. And I was like this, from Hawaii to California. That flight took at least 18 hours. It was the longest flight of all time. Because the whole time I kept saying, I wish things were different than they are. Time slows down when we resist something. When we find ourselves bored, we are resisting what is happening. That's another way to tell. And if we find ourselves suddenly getting tired, you ever watched a video or watched some movie with somebody and they want you to watch it and you're just, I'd rather be watching football or something. And you just are falling asleep. You're just kind of getting tired. That's another indication that you're resisting what's happening. Okay? It's really, really a fascinating thing to watch. If ever you feel less than calm, happy, peaceful feelings, tune into your thoughts about what's happening, and that'll indicate why you're having them. Okay? Now, we go above the line, the solution, or as at least, in my opinion, ways to stay out of the stress response, ways to stay peaceful, ways to stay happy. And the first level, and it'll sound kind of weird because it doesn't seem like anything, like you're doing anything. But the first level, I call observation, where I'm saying, in this level we say, because some of us, we may not know how to think differently than we are trained to think, which is entirely below this line. I wish it were different. This should be a lot. Idiots. We train ourselves to think that way, so it's kind of difficult to go above that line. We're not used to it, and so I think this first one is a piece of cake. And all we do in those instances, we say to ourselves, I'm noticing that, and then you let your senses tell you what it is that you're noticing. Now, this will sound weird, like, that doesn't sound like but I want you to watch the outcome. So, torn ACL. What could he say in that instant that would be in the observation mode?
Now I get to spend more time with my family.
Okay, no, you're moving up a little bit. Hold on. When you're still, you're jumping into more positive things still. But if you're in the observation mode, what would he say? Oh, I'm noticing that. Yeah, that there's a lot of pain happening down there. Now, that sounds like, well, that's a dumb thing to say. But if he's not going below this line, then he's also not going to have any of the bad emotional states as a result of it. It's wow. Coworker, what could you say if you're in the observation mode that would, when he's unloading or whatever he's doing, What could you say where you say, I'm noticing that?
I always say, like, I notice that a lot of things he's saying, I have no control over.
Okay. Or he just keeps on talking. He keeps saying stuff and he's got a lot of energy going. Right? You don't have to make it be part of you. It's just his problem and you happen to be there while he's unloading it. But all you have to do is, oh wow, you got something going on for yourself, don't you? Okay. Guy swears at me. If I'm in the observation mode, what do I say? What's the thought that I have?
Noticing this guy is not very pleased.
Yeah. There you go. I'm noticing. Now, if I say that to myself, get this. If I say that in that way to myself, what's the resulting feeling I'm going to have?
Empathy.
Maybe. What's an even more likely feeling that I will have when I just go, wow, I notice you're pretty upset about something? Maybe. I mean, that's pushing it a little. I would be more just calm. You know, oh, you're having a big, rough day. Okay. It doesn't, and and what you were saying earlier, see that if I respond angrily, how's he likely to continue to respond?
Get more angry.
He will, and so that's why we have wars and arguments. But if I just go, wow, that's something for you today. I'm noticing you're pretty upset, and then just, it kind of, what was his likely response to that? Okay, if it was just entirely, wow, you got something going on, and I just keep driving, he's going to go, well, I can't get this guy. Okay, I guess I'll keep going. It shapes how we respond to things, shapes subsequent events. Imperceptibly, maybe, but it does do some shaping. If I go down into my daughter's room and she's not there, there's nothing I can do about the fact that she's been messy, and I see this room, what is that going to sound like in my head? What am I going to be saying to myself? What? Yeah, there's a lot of clothes here. Well, that's interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, if that might think, well, that's a dumb thing, but if I'm thinking that way, what emotion am I not going to have toward her? Is that a good thing? The last thing I know for sure, at least with her, the more I resist how messy she is, the messier she gets. The more I just let her have, where I stay in this above the line part, one, it doesn't affect me. I'm like, it's like, you can have your messes, and I choose to be peaceful. Going up, and I'm going to combine two of them. I'm going to put together acceptance and allowance. And essentially on these two, you're essentially saying, it's okay. That's how you are. That's how things are. Things get a little strange, So, like, you tear your ACL. Okay, that's what happened. Must be some reason why I'm supposed to have a torn Achilles right now. And that's what I had to say, because I was so upset. I was actually in training for some races that summer, and all I could think about at first was, man, this is just screwing up all of my training for the runs. And I kept getting angrier and angrier, and finally I just said, okay, I'm going to go above the line. Must be something else that I'm supposed to do. And it turned out that summer I wrote a textbook. It was that summer when I wrote most of the book that we're using for this class. I had a lot of extra time on my hands because I couldn't do a lot of things that I like to do. Okay, guy swears at me, or either one of these, complainer, coworker. What would you say to yourself? Remember, it's your thoughts. What would you say to yourself at this point, or at this level of acceptance or allowance, as he's continually being whatever he is, doing whatever he's doing?
Just, this is how he is. And
Yeah, he can't help it.
him.
I love saying that to myself. He can't help it. That's just how he is, and he can't help it. I don't think that's true, but when I say that to myself, that's like, okay, that's why he does that. He can't help it. Okay? That's where he is today. Okay, disapproving parents. I get it, that they may not like how I've chosen to spend the rest of my life. And, I'll have to live with that. Instead of resisting, they should approve. No, that's where they are. Okay, sudden assignments happen, pop quizzes happen. I'm in school. That's what happens from time to time. I've handled them before. I could probably handle this one. Okay, miscarriage. Wasn't the right time for that kid to be in our family. My daughter's room. She's that way. Maybe someday she'll grow. Do people grow out of that messy? I hope. Do they? My other daughter is just as clean and it's just amazing. I don't know how they grew up in the same family, but she's just so opposite. But do you see how I feel when that's how I am? If I'm that way, what's the feelings that I get? I'm okay. It's really interesting that, I don't know if any of you remember looking at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember what was at the top of that in his triangle of hierarchy of needs? What was at the top? What did you say? Or self-actualization, right. In other words, he went all around the world and he found people who were functioning at their highest psychologically, and he said there are a few characteristics that these people have, and one of the things that he said was common to those people who were self-actualized is they were accepting of most everything. They just accepted, they got it about what you're saying, that you can't do anything about this. It's far wiser to accept it than resist it. Okay, now, I want to just play with these last two really quickly, because I think these are where we can change it to our greatest benefit, any situation. In the discovery mode, we ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? What is it about this situation that I'm supposed to learn here? In this case with my daughter, I think the thing I'm supposed to learn is patience with myself and with other people. That's a far better emotion than anger at her. And if I'm with her, get this, if I'm with her and that's how I am, how are we likely to be? If I'm in what can I learn from my own need to be patient, how are we likely to be in our relationship? Is it going to be awful, or is it going to be great? It's going to be good, huh? See, this works like crazy in relationships. Whatever relationship you're in, if you got problems, remember, and Covey said, if you think the problem's outside of you, in relationships, that thought's the problem, yeah.
I was just going to say, my husband, when he did his ACL, he said it was a humbling experience. He had to learn to slow down.
Good.
Take better care of himself.
Good.
And learn that he's not invincible and
Yeah.
bad things do
when we ask ourselves, what can I learn about this situation? It's a far higher way of responding. The highest level, I'm convinced, is that of gratitude. Yeah. When you understand the higher principle of there must be some reason why this is happening and it is for my good and I'm grateful for it, the resulting feeling you get is joy. The resulting feeling you get is serenity. You get peacefulness. When in every instance, and you consciously go, I'm so grateful I have a daughter. I'm so grateful I'm in school.